Hello, everyone, and welcome back. You think you know evil. You think it has a face, a clear motive that makes sense when you close your case file. But the worst monsters hide in plain sight. Sometimes they're architects with a vision nobody else can see. Sometimes they're people you'd trust completely, until the moment you realize you can't. Sometimes they're patient, so patient that they can wait 18 years for the perfect mistake. Tonight, we're opening 4 case files from the darkest corners of American crime. These aren't theories or speculation. These are FBI investigations that forced agents to completely rethink everything they believed about crime, motivation, and deception. But here's what makes these cases different. They're not just about what happened. They're about how close evil comes to winning, how the smallest detail, a fiber, a cup, a moment of hesitation, can change everything. Before we begin, let me know in the comments, what time is it where you are right now? And if these stories stay with you the way they stay, with the agents who lived them, hit that like button and subscribe. It helps us keep bringing you the truth that nobody wants to face. Now, turn off the lights. We're going into the files. Story 1. I still can't look at a Thanksgiving turkey without thinking about Clara Nash. Not because of some poetic symbolism about sacrifice or gratitude, but because that's what I was supposed to be doing on that Thursday morning in 2019. Carving a turkey, watching football, pretending my marriage wasn't falling apart. Instead, I was standing on the shoulder of Route 9 in the Hollow Creek, Washington, looking at something that would destroy my faith in victims forever. My name's Alex Stanford. I've been with the FBI's Violent Crimes Division for 19 years. I've worked child abductions, serial murders, trafficking rings. I thought I'd seen every variation of human evil. I was wrong. The call came in at 8 a.m. A trucker heading south had spotted what he described as a skeleton wrapped in chains stumbling along the fog line. He'd been too scared to stop, called 911 from the next rest area. By the time I got there, 3 county units had already secured the scene, and what they'd found wasn't a skeleton. It was Clara Nash. She'd been missing for 22 days. Vanished on October 3rd while picking blackberries near her property. Her husband, Kyle, had reported it that evening when she didn't come home. We'd searched 400 acres of forest, used dogs, drones, volunteers. Found nothing. The case had gone cold within a week. We figured she'd fallen into a ravine or been taken by someone passing through. Hollow Creek is the kind of place where the highway cuts right through town and strangers are just part of the landscape. But here she was, alive. Barely. I've seen starvation before. This was textbook. She weighed maybe 90 pounds, and I later found out she'd been 142 when she disappeared. Her blonde hair had been hacked off with something dull, leaving jagged patches across her scalp. She was wearing an oversized gray hoodie that hung on her like a shroud, and underneath it, her arms were marked with ligature wounds, deep grooves where chains or rope had cut into the flesh over and over. When I got close enough to help her into the ambulance, I saw the brand, seared into her right shoulder about 3 inches across, an inverted eye. The burn was infected, edges black and weeping. It looked like it had been done with a cattle iron, and whoever did it hadn't cared about her screaming. She whispered one thing before they loaded her up. Her voice was barely there, just breath shaped into words. The faceless ones. Then she passed out. At the hospital, the doctors worked on her for 6 hours. Ketoacidosis, severe malnutrition, infected wounds, broken nose that had healed wrong. She'd been living in conditions that most people wouldn't survive for 3 days, let alone 3 weeks. When she finally woke up, I was there. I needed to know who did this, needed to know where they were. She told me everything, and I believed every word. According to Clara, she'd been grabbed from behind while picking blackberries. Never saw their faces. They drugged her, and when she woke up, she was in a cellar. Root cellar, she thought. Stone walls, dirt floor, one bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. Her captors wore burlap masks. 2 of them. They never spoke English, just some kind of chanting. She said it sounded like tongues, like the kind of thing you'd hear in a cult documentary. They kept her chained to a support beam, fed her once every 3 days, just enough to keep her alive. Water from a bucket that tasted like rust, and they branded her. Made her watch while they heated the iron in a camp stove. Made her understand what was coming. She said she fought, and that's when they broke her nose, slammed her face into the stone wall to teach her not to resist. I sat in that hospital room taking notes, watching this 34-year-old Sunday school teacher describe torture, and all I could think was that I was going to find these people. I was going to make sure they never saw daylight again. The town rallied. Hollow Creek isn't big, maybe 4,000 people, and everyone knew Clara. She taught Sunday school at First Methodist. Her kids, 2 boys aged 8 and 10, were in Little League. Her husband Kyle managed the local hardware store. They were the kind of family you see in commercials. Perfect. Wholesome. American. Within 48 hours, there were 3 GoFundMe pages raising money for medical bills and therapy. The total hit $500,000 in a week. News vans parked outside the hospital. Clara's face was on every major network. The story had everything. Innocent victim, mysterious cult, miraculous survival. It was perfect. I worked the case like my life depended on it. We processed the clothes she'd been wearing. That oversized hoodie tested positive for male DNA, skin cells caught in the fabric. We ran it through CODIS, got nothing. Ran it through genealogical databases. That took longer. While we waited, I interviewed Clara 6 times. Each time, the story got more detailed. She remembered the smell of the cellar, mildew and old potatoes. She remembered the chanting, phrases she couldn't understand but could repeat. I had linguists analyze it. They said it was gibberish, but gibberish designed to sound like Latin or maybe Enochian. The kind of thing someone would use if they were trying to seem a cult. I didn't think anything of it. Cults do weird things. That's what makes them cults. We searched for root cellars within a 50-mile radius. There are hundreds in that part of Washington. Old homesteads, abandoned farms. We cleared 60 of them in the first month. Nothing. No signs of recent use, no chains, no evidence of Clara ever being there. The DNA came back in February 2020, 3 months into the investigation. It matched a man named Tobias Lundgren. He lived in a cabin outside Forks, about 80 miles west of Hollow Creek. He had no criminal record, no connection to Clara that we could find, but his DNA was all over that hoodie. I kicked his door at 6 a.m. on a Wednesday. Had 8 agents with me, expecting a compound, expecting resistance. What I found was a man living in squalor. Tobias Lundgren was 36 years old, unemployed, surviving on disability checks. His cabin was falling apart. No running water, no heat except a wood stove. And inside, on every wall, were pictures of Clara. Not recent pictures, old ones. Yearbook photos, prom pictures, candid shots that looked like they'd been taken from a distance. He'd been obsessed with her for years. Since high school, we later found out. They'd gone to prom together once. 1 date. And he'd never moved on. When I cuffed him, he didn't fight. He just cried. Not angry tears, not violent tears. Defeated tears. He kept saying, "She said you wouldn't come for me. She said this was part of the plan." That should have been my first warning. But I didn't hear it. All I heard was a guilty man trying to shift blame. In the interrogation room, Tobias told me a story I didn't want to believe. He said Clara had contacted him in September 2019, messaged him on social media, said she wanted to reconnect, to apologize for how things ended in high school. He was lonely. He was desperate. He said yes. She drove to his cabin on October 3rd, told him she was having problems at home, needed to get away for a while. Could she stay with him? Just for a few days? He let her. Of course he let her. But she didn't stay a few days. She stayed 3 weeks, and according to Tobias, she made it hell. He said she refused to eat. He'd make food. She'd throw it at the walls. He showed me photos on his phone, dated, time-stamped, pictures of his cabin with food smeared on the floor, plates shattered, pictures of Clara screaming at him. He said she cut her own hair, took his kitchen scissors and hacked it off in the bathroom while he begged her to stop. He said she starved herself, literally starved herself. And when he tried to get her help, tried to call someone, she threatened him. She told him that if he called the police, she'd say he raped her. She'd say he'd been raping her since high school. She'd say he kidnapped her. And who would they believe? A beloved Sunday school teacher or a disabled man living in a shack in the woods? Then came the brand. He showed me the cattle iron. It was in his shed, covered in rust. He said Clara heated it herself in his wood stove. Told him he had to do it. Held it out to him and said if he didn't brand her, she'd destroy him. He did it. He branded her while crying so hard he could barely see, and she didn't scream. That's what got me. He said she didn't scream. She bit down on a leather belt and took it, and when it was done, she smiled. I didn't believe him, not a word. It was the most absurd defense I'd ever heard. A woman tortures herself to frame a man. Impossible. But then the forensics came back. The DNA wasn't just on the hoodie. It was on the iron, on the scissors, on the phone he'd used to take those photos. And the metadata matched. The photos were real, taken during the 22 days Clara was missing. We brought in a forensic psychologist. She reviewed everything, the medical reports, the photos, Tobias' statement, and she said something I'll never forget. She said, "Some people hurt themselves to hurt others. It's not common, but it happens. Factitious disorder imposed on self for secondary gain. In rare cases, individuals will endure extreme suffering to manipulate a narrative, to become the perfect victim." I went back to Clara. This time I didn't go as the sympathetic investigator. I went with evidence. I showed her the photos, the timestamps, the DNA. I told her we had Tobias and he was telling a very different story. I asked her to explain, and that's when I saw it. The mask dropped. Just for a second. The trembling victim act vanished. Her voice changed, dropped an octave, got colder. She looked at me with eyes that weren't scared. They were calculating. "Do you have any idea how much work it takes to be this perfect, Agent Stanford? I earned every scar." Then the mask came back. She started crying, said she didn't know what I was talking about, said Tobias must have manipulated her, must have made her think she wanted it. Classic gaslighting. But I'd seen the truth. Just for that one moment, I'd seen who she really was. We kept digging. Found out Clara's marriage was failing. Kyle had been talking about divorce. She'd been removed from her Sunday school position after complaints from parents. Her perfect life was crumbling. And then she found Tobias. Lonely, desperate, Still in love with her after 18 years. The perfect patsy. We found the genealogy website she'd used to track him down. Found the burner phone she'd used to contact him. Found the journals she kept during those 22 days, hidden in a storage unit she'd rented under a fake name. In them, she documented everything. Her weight loss, her pain tolerance, her plan. She was going to frame a woman named Gwen Starrett, a PTA rival, someone Clara hated. The brand was supposed to match a necklace Gwen wore. The root cellar story was supposed to point to a property Gwen's family owned. But when we started investigating too fast, getting too close, Clara pivoted. She let us find Tobias instead. Easier target, less collateral damage. The trial was a nightmare. Clara's defense painted her as a mentally ill woman who'd been manipulated by Tobias into hurting herself. Despite the evidence, despite the journals, despite everything, half the town still believed her, still sent her money, still called her a survivor. The jury didn't. They convicted her on fraud, perjury, and filing a false report. She got 8 years. Tobias was released without charges. Last I heard, he moved to Alaska. Doesn't talk to anyone. Clara served 4 years and got out on good behavior in March 2025. I saw her picture in the paper last month. She's living in California now, blonde hair grown back, smiling. She started a nonprofit for abuse survivors. The brand is still visible on her shoulder in photos. She wears tank tops, shows it off. Her story now is that the system failed her, that they convicted the wrong person, that she's rebuilding her life despite the injustice. And people believe her. Because she's the perfect victim. She looks right, sounds right, suffers in ways that cameras can capture. The truth doesn't matter when the performance is that good. I don't work missing persons cases anymore. Can't do it. Every time someone reports a loved one gone, I wonder, is this real? Or is someone out there in a cabin or a cellar or a basement hurting themselves so they can hurt someone else? Creating scars they'll wear like medals? I still have the photos. The ones Tobias took. Clara in his cabin, surrounded by the food she refused to eat. Clara holding the scissors to her own hair. Clara staring at the camera with that same cold expression she gave me in the interview room. The expression that says, I know exactly what I'm doing and you can't stop me. The worst part isn't that she did it. The worst part is that it almost worked. If Tobias hadn't kept those photos, hadn't documented everything, she'd have gotten away with it. He'd be in prison. She'd be a millionaire. And somewhere, another lonely man would be getting a message from a woman he used to know, asking if she could stay for just a few days. Because monsters don't always grab you from behind. Sometimes they knock on your door, smile, and ask if you remember prom. Sometimes they bring their own chains, and sometimes the worst torture is the kind people do to themselves, knowing someone else will pay the price. I think about Clara Nash every Thanksgiving, and I carve the turkey. And I wonder how many perfect victims are out there right now, creating their own scars, writing their own stories, waiting for someone like me to believe them. Because that's the real horror. Not that evil exists, but that it can starve itself, burn itself, break itself, and still smile for the cameras, still collect the donations, still write the memoir, still win. Story 2. I still keep the photograph in my desk drawer. Not because I want to look at it, but because forgetting feels worse. It shows 2 kids, twins, 9 years old, Leo and Mia Sterling. School pictures from that fall, both wearing those forced smiles you get when the photographer counts to 3. I was the one who had to tell their grandmother they were gone. Both of them. Different ways, different times, but gone all the same. My name's Garrett Ashford. 22 years with the Bureau, most of it in the Behavioral Analysis Unit out of Quantico. I've worked cases that would make your stomach turn, seen crime scenes that don't leave you when you clock out. But Blackwood Ridge, Montana, November 2005, that one's different. That one still wakes me up. The call came in on a Tuesday morning. Local sheriff up in Blackwood Ridge, tiny place in the mountains, maybe 200 people if you're counting generous. He'd found a scene he didn't know how to process. 3 dead, 2 missing, and something about the staging that made him reach out to us instead of keeping it local. I caught a flight out of Dulles that afternoon, landed in Missoula, and drove 3 hours into country that got emptier with every mile. By the time I reached the Sterling place, it was almost darks. The cabin sat at the end of a logging road, surrounded by dense forest, the kind of isolation people move to Montana for. Squad cars were parked outside, their light bars painting the trees red and blue. Sheriff Dunham met me at the door. Older guy, weathered face, hands that shook slightly when he lit his cigarette. Agent Ashford, thanks for coming out. I've been doing this job 30 years, and I've never seen anything like what's inside. The smell hit me first. Not decay, not yet, but something metallic and wrong. The Sterling family had been arranged around their dining table like they were having dinner. Mother, stepfather, oldest son. 19-year-old Cole Sterling was slumped in his chair. The parents sat across from each other, hands placed flat on the table. All 3 had their eyes bound with red tape, the kind drafters use. Not duct tape, not electrical tape. Drafting tape. Precise, deliberate. But it was what sat in the center of the table that made my blood run cold. Blueprints. Not for a house. These were detailed floor plans of the Sterling cabin, marked with times. 7 a.m. kitchen, 3 p.m. living room, 9 p.m. bedrooms. The daily routine of this family, mapped out with architectural precision, and over the mother, stepfather, and Cole, someone had drawn red X's. Clean. Final. The twins, I said. Leo and Mia, where are they? Missing. Beds weren't slept in, but their backpacks are still here. Coats are still here? It's 30 degrees outside. I walked through the cabin, documenting everything. The killer hadn't ransacked the place. He'd studied it. I found more notes in the margins of the blueprints. Structural weakness, load-bearing failure, foundation, cracks, engineering terminology that read like a manifesto. At the bottom of the largest sheet, in careful block letters, Phase 1, demolition. Phase 2, salvage. The twins were Phase 2. We set up a command post in Blackwood Ridge's excuse for a municipal building. Local PD, Forest Service, volunteers, everyone who could walk searched those woods. I focused on the why. This wasn't random. This wasn't rage. This was planned by someone who thought in terms of systems and structures. I started going through the family's computers. The stepfather, Troy Kimball, had only been in the picture for 2 years. The mother, Beth Sterling, was a teacher. Cole had been taking online classes at a community college. Normal people living a quiet life. Then I found the laptop. It was in a shed about 200 yards from the cabin. Old surveyor's shack, roof half caved in, snow already piling inside. The laptop was wrapped in plastic, hidden under a tarp. I don't know why I checked that shack. Instinct, maybe? Or dumb luck. But when I booted it up and saw the encryption, I knew we'd found something. It took our tech team in Quantico 18 hours to crack it. What they found made me wish we hadn't. The laptop mirrored a dark web form called The Blueprint. It was a journal, entries going back 3 years. The author called himself The Architect. He wrote about society's structural failures, about families built on weak foundations, about the need to demolish what was broken and salvage what could still be saved. The Sterling family was Project 18. There were 17 before them. I read every entry. Had to. Each project was a family. Each project followed the same pattern. Study the structure, identify the weaknesses, remove the failed elements, salvage the pure materials. The pure materials were always the children, but not all of them. Only the ones he deemed strong enough to survive his tests. The architect described his background in the early entries. His name was Vance Halford, former structural engineer out of Billings, lost his license in 2002 after a bridge design he'd worked on failed inspection. Lost his family in the divorce that followed. Lost everything, really, except his belief that he could rebuild the world correctly if he just removed the flawed parts first. The journal entries for the Sterling family were detailed. He'd been watching them for months. He'd determined that Troy was weak, that Beth enabled that weakness, that Cole was following the same path. But the twins, he wrote, showed potential. They were young enough to be reformed, strong enough to be worth saving. He planned to take them into the Bitterroot Mountains and teach them to survive. His version of survival. I found his supply caches marked on topographic maps buried in the laptop files. 6 locations scattered through the wilderness, each stocked with food, tarps, rope, and what he called educational materials. I sent teams to every cache. We found 5 of them. Empty. Used recently based on the tracks. Someone had been moving through those mountains, teaching someone how to live off the land, or teaching them how to die trying. We found Leo on the 4th day. He was 8 miles from the cabin, hypothermic and unresponsive, tucked inside a snow cave that had been constructed with disturbing skill. He was wrapped in blueprints. Not random blueprints, but designs for a bridge. A perfect bridge. One that wouldn't fail. He died 2 hours later at the hospital without regaining consciousness. The doctors said he'd been exposed for at least 48 hours. Halford had decided Leo wasn't strong enough to salvage. That left Mia. Somewhere in those mountains, a 9-year-old girl was with a man who thought he was saving her by destroying everything she knew. We had search parties working grid patterns, helicopters with thermal imaging, dogs tracking scent trails that led nowhere. The snow was coming down harder each day. Temperature was dropping into the teens at night. We were running out of time. Then we caught a break. A credit card hit. Not Halford's card, but one belonging to a hiker named Craig Oakley, who'd gone missing near the Bitterroot Range 2 weeks earlier. The card was used at a gas station in Dillon, Montana, 60 miles west of Blackwood Ridge. Single transaction. Coffee and a sandwich. I pulled the surveillance footage. Vance Halford had changed his appearance, shaved his head, grown a beard, added glasses. But it was him. And walking beside him, hood pulled low, was a small figure. Mia. I looked at the timestamp. The transaction had happened 40 minutes ago. I grabbed 2 agents, Felicity Pugh and Trent Bellamy, and we drove. Dillon's not big. Maybe 4,000 people. Most of them spread out across the ranch country. But there's one main drag, and on it, there's a diner. Route 9. Diner. 24 hours. We pulled into the parking lot, and I saw it immediately. An old Ford pickup, rusted with Montana plates that came back stolen. Inside, the diner was almost empty. A waitress wiping down the counter, a cook visible through the kitchen window, and at a corner booth, Vance Halford sat across from a little girl wearing a too big jacket. I didn't call it in yet. No cell signal this far out, and the storm had taken down the phone lines. It was just us. I motioned for Pugh and Bellamy to cover the exits. Then I walked inside. The bell above the door chimed. Halford looked up. For just a second, our eyes met. He smiled. Not surprised, not scared, almost relieved. I slid into the booth next to Mia. She didn't look at me. She was staring at the table where Halford was sketching on a napkin with a pen. I could see the lines taking shape. Floor plan of the diner, positions marked, the waitress at the counter, the cook in the back, exit routes highlighted. Mia, I said quietly. My name's Garrett. I'm with the FBI. You're safe now. She didn't respond, just kept staring at the napkin. That's when I noticed her wrist. Red drafting tape wrapped around it like a bracelet. He'd marked her, claimed her as salvaged material. She can't hear you, Halford said. His voice was calm, measured. I taught her to tune out distractions, focus on the structure, on what matters. What matters is she's 9 years old and you murdered her family. I removed the structural failures. She understands now. Don't you, Mia? Mia nodded slowly, mechanical, like she'd been programmed. I felt rage rising but pushed it down. Training kicked in. Keep him talking. Keep him calm until backup arrives. Why the Sterlings, Vance? What did they do? They existed incorrectly. Troy Kimball was a weak foundation. Beth Sterling was a cracked support beam. Cole was following the same design flaws. But the twins, he tapped the napkin, they were good materials. Strong, salvageable. You killed Leo. Leo failed the stress test. Some materials look strong, but crumble under pressure. It's unfortunate, but necessary. We can't rebuild on faulty components. And Mia? He looked at her with something that might have been pride if it wasn't so twisted. Mia's going to help me with the next project. She understands the work now. She's seen what happens when structures fail. She's ready to help me fix things. That's when I realized we had a bigger problem. Halford wasn't running. He'd wanted to be found. This diner, this moment, this was part of his design. You planned this, I said. Every detail. I needed to be caught eventually. The work is bigger than one person. It needs documentation. It needs someone to understand it. He slid the napkin across the table. I've been sketching while we waited. Do you see the problem with this building? I looked at the napkin. His floor plan was perfect. But he'd drawn something else. Something I didn't understand at first. Then I saw it. The gas line running under the building, the main shut-off valve, the kitchen stove. You want to burn it down, I said. I want to demonstrate structural failure in real time. These people, he gestured to the waitress and cook, they're living in a failed system. I can show you how it collapses, how the weak points give way, how... I drew my weapon, put it on the table between us. We're done here, Vance. Mia's coming with me. You're under arrest. For the first time, his smile faded. He looked disappointed, like I'd failed a test I didn't know I was taking. You're thinking small, Agent. You're focused on saving individuals when you should be concerned with the system. The entire structure is failing. Can't you see that? I'm trying to rebuild it correctly, one project at a time. Pugh and Bellamy moved in from both sides. We had him contained. Mia still hadn't moved, hadn't looked at me, hadn't done anything except stare at that napkin covered in Halford's architectural madness. We took him into custody without incident. He didn't resist, just stood up, held out his wrist for the cuffs, and kept talking about load-bearing walls and foundation repair while we walked him out to the car. Mia came with us, silent and hollow-eyed, still wearing that red tape on her wrist. She wouldn't let anyone take it off. We found Leo's body had been wrapped in blueprints just like we thought. But what we hadn't known until the autopsy was that Halford had spent hours with him after he died, positioned him carefully, left notes about what Leo's failure meant for the next phase, treated his death like a structural engineering problem that needed documentation. In Halford's truck, we found 17 folders, one for each previous project. Families across 4 states, all of them cold cases, all of them unsolved until now. He'd kept meticulous records, photographs, notes, blueprints of their homes marked with X's and salvage symbols. 23 children taken over 3 years, 9 of them never found. The other 14 either dead from his tests or escaped only to die from exposure. Mia was the first one we recovered alive. The interrogation lasted 6 hours. Halford sat across from me in a gray room in Helena, hands cuffed to the table, and explained his work like he was presenting a thesis. He talked about his design philosophy, about how modern society was built on a cracked foundation, about how he was the only one willing to do the necessary demolition to make room for something better. At the end, after I'd heard more than I ever wanted to about structural integrity and human failures, he leaned forward and said something that still sits wrong with me. "Agent Ashford, you've studied my work now. You've read the blueprint. You've seen the patterns. And now you'll spend the rest of your career thinking about structures and weaknesses, about how systems fail, about how easily things collapse. I didn't build this to last, Agent. I built it to haunt you." He was right. Vance Halford was convicted on 19 counts of first-degree murder. Life without parole, psychiatric facility in Colorado where he still writes letters about architecture and human engineering. I don't read them anymore. The warden keeps them filed in case they contain information about the 9 children still missing, but so far they're just more theoretical essays about building better societies through demolition and salvage. Mia Sterling was placed with her grandmother in Oregon. Last I heard, she was in high school. Doesn't talk much, according to the family therapist. Spends a lot of time alone. Still wears a red bracelet on her wrist, though it's not drafting tape anymore. Just red cloth. A reminder of something I don't think she'll ever fully escape. I've thought about reaching out over the years. Thought about asking her what those 10 days in the mountains were like, what Halford taught her, what she learned watching her brother die and knowing she had to pass whatever test he designed just to survive. But I never do. Some questions don't need answers. I still work for the Bureau, still profile killers and chase monsters. But Halford changed something. He was right about that. Now when I walk into a building, I see load-bearing walls. I see structural weak points. I see systems that could fail if someone decided they needed fixing. And late at night, when I can't sleep, I think about the 9 children still missing. Wonder if they're still out there somewhere. Wonder if they're survived his test and are living under different names, or if they're buried in the wilderness, wrapped in blueprints for bridges that will never be built. I think about Project 18, about the Sterling family sitting around their dinner table with red tape over their eyes, marked for demolition, about Leo wrapped in plans for a perfect bridge, about Mia learning to survive in the mountains with a man who thought he was saving her by destroying everything she loved. And I think about what Halford said, that he built this to haunt me, built it into my head like a blueprint I can't unsee. Every case now, I look for the patterns, the structure, the design behind the madness, because he was right about something else too. Once you see how things are built, you can't stop seeing how easily they could fall apart. That photograph in my drawer, Leo and Mia Sterling smiling their school picture smiles, that's my reminder. Reminder that some people see the world as a broken structure that needs fixing. And reminder that the ones they salvage don't always want to be saved. I'll keep working cases. Keep hunting people like Vance Halford. Keep trying to find those 9 missing children, even though I know the odds. Because if I stop, if I let it go, then he wins. Then his blueprint becomes reality, and the world really does collapse into weak foundations and demolition projects and salvaged materials that used to be human beings with names and families and futures. So, yeah, I still keep that photograph. Not because I want to look at it, but because forgetting feels worse, and because somewhere out there might be a child who survived one of Halford's tests. A child who's waiting for someone to find them and tell them they don't have to be salvage material anymore. They can just be a kid again. Even if it's a kid who'll never fully escape the blueprint drawn around their life by a man who thought murder was architecture. I hope Mia Sterling finds peace someday. I hope she takes off that red bracelet and forgets the lessons Halford taught her in those mountains. I hope she gets to be normal, whatever that means after everything she survived. But I don't think she will. Because I read the letters she sends to her therapist, the ones that get forwarded to the Bureau as part of her ongoing victim support file. And in every single one, somewhere in the margins, she draws blueprints, small ones, careful ones, floor plans of buildings I don't recognize, with X's marked over doorways and salvage notes written in handwriting that looks too much like Halford's. Some structures, once they're built, you can't tear down. They become permanent. They become part of the foundation. And maybe that was his real masterpiece. Not the murders, not even the twisted philosophy, but the blueprints he left behind in the minds of everyone who studied his work, including a 9-year-old girl who survived when her brother didn't, who learned his lessons so well that even now, 15 years later, she can't stop designing structures in the margins of her life, and including me, an FBI agent who can't look at a building anymore without seeing its weaknesses, who can't interview a family without mapping their routines and seeing where the cracks might form, who wakes up at 2 a.m. thinking about load-bearing walls and foundation failures and how easy it is to demolish something when you understand exactly how it was built. Vance Halford is in prison for life. The Sterling family is dead except for Mia. The 9 missing children might never be found. The blueprint journal sits in evidence storage in Quantico, where it'll stay until the case is finally closed, which might be never. But the real blueprint, the one that matters, that's still out there, still being drawn and redrawn in the minds of everyone who encountered his work, still haunting us with architectural precision, still making us question the structures we live in and the foundations we build our lives on. And that's exactly what he wanted. To build something that would last, not in the physical world, but in the spaces between our thoughts, where doubt lives and fear breeds, and the certainty that we're all just one structural failure away from collapse becomes impossible to shake. Some cases you solve and walk away from. Some cases you carry forever. Blackwood Ridge, Montana, November 2005. That's one I'll die carrying. Because Vance Halford didn't just kill 19 people and traumatize a little girl. He rebuilt the way I see the world. And you can't demo that. You can't salvage yourself back to who you were before. You just learn to live in the structure he designed and hope the foundations hold. Story 3. I still remember the heat that day. August in West Virginia feels like breathing through a wet blanket. The kind of humid, suffocating afternoon where your shirt sticks to your back and the air tastes like copper. I arrived at the scene just 3 hours after the 911 call came in. My name is Declan Rangel. I have been with the FBI's Violent Crimes Unit for 17 years. I've worked cases that would keep you awake for weeks. But this one, the Rosalind Mahoney case, this one still sits in my chest like a stone I can't swallow. Rosalind Mahoney wasn't doing anything dangerous. She wasn't walking home alone at night from some bar. She wasn't hitchhiking on a dark highway. She was painting a trellis in the common garden of her student housing complex in Blackwood Ridge. It was 2 in the afternoon on a Tuesday in August 1999. There were people everywhere. Someone was mowing a lawn 3 buildings over. A woman was walking her dog. Kids were riding bikes in the parking lot. But in a 14-minute window, Rosalind ceased to exist. When I walked up to that trellis, the white paint on the wood was still wet. I could see where her brush had made clean, even strokes. The paintbrush itself was lying in the grass, not dropped in panic, not thrown, but placed there gently, like she'd set it down, meaning to pick it up a second later. Her radio was still playing. Some generic pop song I didn't recognize. The batteries would run for another 6 hours before anyone thought to turn it off. The only sign that something had gone wrong was one shoe. A canvas sneaker, light blue with white laces, lying near the curb. The heel was crushed inward, like someone had stepped on it hard while it was still on her foot. No screams. No one heard tires screech. No one saw a struggle. Just a void where a 20-year-old architecture student used to be. I knew right then, looking at that lonely shoe with its crushed heel, that we were dealing with a predator who didn't hesitate. Someone who moved fast. Someone who'd done this before. The local police had already canvassed the area by the time I got there. Nobody saw anything useful. One resident thought maybe she'd seen a white van, but couldn't be sure. Another said he'd heard a car door slam, but that was it. Just a door. Could have been anyone. Could have been nothing. We worked that scene for 2 days, brought in dogs. They tracked Rosalind's scent to the curb, and then lost it completely, like she'd been lifted straight up into the air. We interviewed everyone in a half-mile radius, pulled security footage from every business within 3 miles. Nothing. The cameras that should have caught something were broken or pointed the wrong direction. The one camera that had a clear view of the street had been turned off for maintenance that morning. Whoever took Rosalind knew what they were doing. For 5 years, Rosalind Mahoney was a ghost in my office. Her file sat on the corner of my desk where I'd see it first. Thing every morning. Young woman, dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, serious expression. She wanted to design sustainable housing. Had a portfolio full of sketches. Her whole life ahead of her. We chased leads that went nowhere. There was a maintenance worker at the college who gave people a bad feeling. We cleared him. Solid alibi, no priors, just awkward. There was an ex-boyfriend from high school. He'd moved to Oregon 2 years before she disappeared. There was even a false confession from a local addict who thought confessing to unsolved crimes might get him a better deal on his possession charge. He couldn't tell us a single detail that wasn't already public knowledge. I checked the national databases every single morning. VICAP, NCIC, every missing persons network I could access. I was looking for patterns, similar abductions, similar victimology. Young women taken in daylight from safe locations. I found a few possibles, but nothing concrete. Nothing that connected. I started to wonder if the guy who took Rosalind had only done it once. If maybe it was someone passing through who'd never be back, or worse, if he'd gotten so good at hiding bodies that we'd never find any of them. The break didn't come from brilliant detective work. It came from luck and one very observant police officer in Albuquerque, New Mexico. November 2004. 5 years after Rosalind vanished, a patrol officer named Dominic Moody pulled over a white Ford Econoline van for a broken taillight on I-40 just outside the city. Routine traffic stop. The driver, a man in his late 40s with thinning hair and dead eyes, provided his license without being asked. Name was Seth Creed. CDL long-haul trucker, also did seasonal mechanic work. Moody would later say that something felt off. The guy was too calm, too cooperative, kept his hands visible, but wouldn't make eye contact. And he was sweating, even though it was 50 degrees outside. While Moody was running the license, he heard something from the back of the van. A thud, like someone had kicked a metal wall from the inside. Moody drew his weapon, ordered Creed out of the vehicle. Creed complied, still calm, still dead-eyed. When Moody opened the rear doors of that van, he found a 19-year-old woman zip-tied to a metal tie-down in the floor, duct tape over her mouth. She'd been missing from a rest stop in Amarillo for 6 hours. When the call came through our system linking Creed to routes through West Virginia in 1999, I was on the first plane to Albuquerque. I sat across from Seth Creed in an interrogation room that smelled like disinfectant and fear. He looked like nobody. Average height, average build, forgettable face. The kind of guy who could stand next to you in line at a gas station, and you'd never remember seeing him. He admitted to the New Mexico abduction almost immediately. Didn't even try to deny it. The girl was alive. She could identify him. There was no point. But when I asked him about Rosalind, Mahoney, about Blackwood Ridge, about August 1999, he smiled. Not a big smile, just a small twitch at the corner of his mouth. "I've never been to West Virginia," he said. "Never even driven through it." That was a lie. His logbook showed he'd driven through Charleston 3 times in the summer of 1999. But logbooks can be faked. Dates can be changed. I needed more. We seized the van, had it transported to a federal forensics facility in Quantico. I wanted that vehicle torn apart molecule by molecule. From the outside, it was unremarkable. 1996, Ford Econoline. White, no windows in the back. Creed had removed the rear seats and installed metal tie-downs in the floor. But the thing that struck me immediately when I opened those rear doors was how clean it was. The back of that van was a kill room on wheels, and Seth Creed had been very, very careful. The interior was spotless. He'd bleached every surface. There were no fingerprints on the walls except his own. No hair, no fiber, no biological material of any kind. The carpeting had been replaced. The walls had been wiped down with industrial cleaner so strong it had actually damaged the paint in places. The whole space smelled like lemon and death. We brought in a forensics team. They stripped that van, removed the seats, the dashboard, the door panels. They used luminol and found nothing. They used alternate light sources and found nothing. They took samples from every surface and sent them to the lab. 3 days into the examination, we had nothing actionable. My supervisor called me, said we needed to wrap it up. We had Creed on the New Mexico abduction. That was enough for a long sentence. Maybe we needed to let Rosalind Mahoney go. I asked for 1 more day, 1 more pass. "Take apart the safety mechanisms," I told the lead tech. "The seat belts, the door latches, the things he couldn't easily clean." The tech looked at me like I was grasping at straws. He was right. I was. but I couldn't let it go. They dismantled the passenger seatbelt assembly. It's a sealed unit, a plastic housing mounted to the van's wall that contains the retraction mechanism. You can't clean inside it without taking the entire vehicle apart. Most people don't even think about it. Inside the grease that lubricated the retraction gear, the tech found a microscopic fragment. Not a hair, not skin, a fiber. Red. Wool and synthetic blend. So small you couldn't see it without magnification. Rosalind Mahoney had been wearing a red vintage cardigan the day she disappeared. Her mother had knitted it for her. It was in all the photos we distributed. Red with wooden buttons. The fiber was a match. But that wasn't all. Trapped in the same grease mechanism, embedded so deeply it had survived years of use and multiple cleaning attempts, was a speck of biological material smaller than a grain of sand. It was enough for mitochondrial DNA analysis. Rosalind Mahoney. I walked into the interrogation room with the lab report in a folder. I didn't say anything at first. Just sat down across from Seth Creed and looked at him. Really looked at him. At this nothing man who'd stolen a young woman's entire future and buried it somewhere in the woods. Then I slid the photograph across the table. Close-up of the seatbelt mechanism. The fiber highlighted with a yellow marker. She was in the van, Seth. The science says she was in the van. Her DNA. Her clothing. Inside a sealed mechanism you couldn't clean even if you tried. And now the state of West Virginia wants to talk to you about capital murder. I watched the color drain from his face. Watched the arrogance collapse. He didn't care about killing. He cared about dying. His lawyer made the deal that afternoon. Life without parole in exchange for the location of Rosalind's remains. He drew a map on a napkin. Surprisingly detailed. He'd buried her in the Monongahela National Forest, deep in the backcountry, 10 miles from the nearest road, under a specific cluster of pine trees near a dry creek bed. I stood in those woods while they recovered her remains. It was November, 5 years almost to the day after Seth Creed had been pulled over in New Mexico. The forest was quiet except for the sound of careful excavation. They found her exactly where he said she'd be. I thought about the wet paintbrush lying in the grass, about the radio, playing in the afternoon sun, about how a 20-year-old woman had set down her brush for just a moment, probably to wipe sweat from her forehead or adjust her ponytail. And in that moment, a man who looked like nobody had stepped out of a white van and erased her from existence in less time than it takes to paint a wooden slat. The case was officially closed in January 2005. Seth Creed pled guilty to the murder of Rosalind Mahoney and the attempted abduction in New Mexico. He's currently serving life without parole at a federal supermax facility. He'll never see daylight again except through a narrow window in his cell. But here's what keeps me awake. That fiber in the seatbelt. That microscopic fragment that solved the case. It was pure chance. If the tech hadn't dismantled that specific mechanism, if the grease hadn't preserved it, if I hadn't asked for one more day, we never would have connected Creed to Rosalind. And Seth Creed had been driving that van for at least 6 years before. We caught him. 6 years of routes across the country. 6 years of rest stops and empty highways and young women alone, in the wrong place at the wrong time. We've identified 3 other possible victims. Women who disappeared along routes Creed drove. Women who were never found. But we can't prove anything. No bodies, no crime scenes, no microscopic fibers trapped in sealed mechanism. Just names and faces and families who still wait for answers. I still keep Rosalind's file on my desk. Not in the corner anymore. In the drawer, closed. Not because her case is solved. But I take it out sometimes and look at her photo, at that serious expression, at the girl who wanted to build sustainable houses and never got the chance. And I think about how evil doesn't always look like a monster. Sometimes it just looks like a quiet man in a clean white van. Someone forgettable. Someone who could stand next to you in line at a gas station, and you'd never think twice. Someone who's very, very good at making people disappear. Story 4. You think justice works fast? Like in the movies where the bad guy gets caught in an hour minus commercials? No. Real justice is slow. It's 18 years of nightmares and cold case files and watching a monster walk free because you can't prove what you know in your bones to be true. My name's Kevin Bailey. I've been with the FBI for 22 years, working out of the Seattle field office, and for 18 of those years, I've been chasing a ghost, an unknown subject, a DNA profile without a name. It started in the summer of 2005. I wasn't even the primary on the case back then, just a junior agent helping with evidence collection. The victim was a 16-year-old girl named Brooke Armitage. She lived in Pine Valley, Washington, a logging town about 40 minutes east of Olympia, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone, where you don't lock your doors, where evil isn't supposed to find you. Brooke was taken from her back porch on a Thursday night in August. Her mom had sent her outside to bring in the laundry before a storm hit. That was 9 p.m. By 9:15, when her mom called for her, Brooke was gone. The laundry basket was overturned. One of her shoes was lying on its side near the steps. And that was it. No witnesses, no screams, no struggle loud enough for anyone to hear. I remember pulling up to that house around midnight. The place was lit up like a stadium. Every light on, patrol cars in the driveway, neighbors standing on their porches in bathrobes. Brooke's mom, Angela, was sitting on the front steps with a blanket around her shoulders, staring at that overturned laundry basket. Her hands were shaking. She kept asking the same question over and over. Where's my daughter? Where is she? We organized search parties, dogs, helicopters, volunteers from 3 counties. We combed every trail, every logging road, every abandoned structure within a 50-mile radius. For 3 days we searched. Angela didn't leave her porch, didn't change clothes, just sat there with dark circles under her eyes, watching every car that passed, hoping one would bring Brooke home. We found her 3 days later, alive. That's the first thing I tell people, because it matters. She survived. A hiker found her wandering on a Forest Service road about 20 miles north of town, barefoot, in shock, wrapped in a blanket that wasn't hers. She'd been blindfolded the entire time, driven into the mountains, held in what she described as a cabin or a shed that smelled like sawdust and peppermint. Strong smells, the kind that burn into your memory. When I got to the hospital that morning, Brooke was sitting in a bed, wrapped in heated blankets, staring at her hands. She couldn't stop shaking, not from cold, from something deeper. Angela was beside her, holding her hand, crying so hard she couldn't speak. I stood in the doorway for a minute, just watching. Relief and devastation all mixed together. She was alive. But what had been done to her couldn't be undone. She couldn't identify her attacker. Never saw his face. But she heard his voice, low and calm, almost polite. And we had his DNA. He'd made mistakes, left evidence on her clothing, evidence that gave us a complete genetic profile. We ran it through every database we had access to. CODIS, state registries, military records, nothing. Our guy had never been arrested, never been fingerprinted, never served. He was a ghost with a genetic code, and nothing else. The years that followed were the hardest of my career. I moved up, took over the case officially in 2008, and I couldn't let it go. Brooke tried to move on. She went to college, changed her major 3 times, started therapy, stopped therapy, moved to Portland, moved back. Her mom called me every year on the anniversary, August 14th. Just to check in, she'd say. Just to see if there was anything new. And every year I had to tell her no. Those calls were brutal. Angela would start out hopeful. Any leads? Kevin? Anything at all? And I'd have to tell her the same thing I'd told her the year before. We're still working it. We haven't given up. But the truth was we had nothing. No name, no face, just a DNA profile sitting in a database, waiting for a match that never came. I kept the file in my trunk. Literally. A banker's box with every report, every photo, every dead-end lead we'd ever followed. My wife used to joke that the box was like another passenger in our car. She stopped joking about it around year 10. By year 15, we'd stopped talking about it altogether. I'd bring the box inside sometimes, late at night when I couldn't sleep, and I'd go through it again, looking for something I'd missed, some detail that would crack it open. But there was nothing, just the same evidence, the same dead ends, the same unknown subject. I attended conferences on cold case investigations, talked to genealogists, forensic scientists, retired agents who'd worked unsolved cases for decades. Everyone had the same advice. Keep the file active. Keep running the DNA. Wait for technology to catch up. But waiting isn't something you do well when you've seen what I've seen. When you've watched a mother wait 18 years for an answer. But in early 2023, something changed. Not with the case, with the technology. The FBI started using investigative genetic genealogy. You've probably heard of it from those ancestry websites where you spit in a tube and find out you're 3% Scandinavian. Same science, different application. We take an unknown DNA profile from a crime scene and upload it to public genealogy databases. We don't get a name, we get a family tree. The training session was in Quantico. They walked us through the process, showed us case studies, the Golden State Killer, the Bear Brook murders, cases that had been cold for decades, solved because someone uploaded their DNA to a genealogy site. I sat in that conference room, listening to the presentation, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. I submitted the unknown subject's DNA in January 2023. The lab told me it would take months. Genealogists have to build the tree manually, working backward through marriages and births and deaths until they narrow it down to a suspect pool. It took 7 weeks. 7 weeks of checking my email every hour. 7 weeks of waking up at 3 a.m., grabbing my phone, hoping for an update. 7 weeks of feeling like a kid waiting for Christmas, except Christmas was the name of the man who destroyed Brooke Armitage's life. The tree led to a family named Caldwell. Old Washington logging family, been in the state since the 1800s. The genealogist found 3 male relatives in the right age range who would match the DNA profile. 2 were dead. 1 had moved to Alaska in the 90s. The 3rd was still in Washington. His name was Martin Finley. I stared at the email for 10 minutes, just stared at the name on the screen. Martin Finley, 52 years old. Longview, Washington. No criminal record. I pulled up everything I could find on him. Property records, employment history, vehicle registrations. He was too clean, too careful. No social media, no digital footprint. Just a man who'd lived in the same place for 30 years and left no trace. Martin Finley lived in a farmhouse outside of Longview, about 60 miles from Pine Valley. He was 52 years old, worked as an independent handyman, Never married, no kids, no criminal record. He'd lived in that same house for 30 years. And here's the part that made my blood run cold. In 2011, he'd done repair work on Brooke Armitage's street. Her mom had hired him to fix a fence gate. 6 years after he'd abducted her daughter, this man had walked right back into her life, smiled, and taken her money. I pulled the invoices from Angela's old files. She'd kept everything: receipts, business cards, notes. There it was. Finley Handyman Services. March 2011. Fence. Repair. $200. Angela had written on the invoice in blue pen. Very polite. Finished early. I felt sick. He'd stood in her yard, hammered nails into the fence that surrounded her home, the home her daughter no longer felt safe in, and he'd smiled and taken her money. But knowing who he was and proving it in court were two different things. A family tree isn't evidence. It's a lead. To charge him, we needed his DNA directly, not his third cousin twice removed. His. And Martin Finlay wasn't going to volunteer it. I called a meeting with the prosecutor's office, laid out what we had: the genealogy match, the proximity, the timeline. They listened, nodded, and then hit me with the reality. Without a direct DNA match, we couldn't charge him. We couldn't even get a warrant for his DNA. A family tree wasn't probable cause. It was just a really good lead. So what do? I asked. We wait for him to give it to us, the prosecutor said. Voluntarily or otherwise, I started surveillance in March. Watched his house, his routines, his habits. Martin Finlay was careful, obsessively careful. He burned his trash in a 55-gallon drum in his backyard. Twice a week, like clockwork, he'd carry out bags of garbage and incinerate everything. Stood there with a poker, making sure it all turned to ash. I watched him do it from a quarter-mile away with binoculars. And I knew he'd been waiting for us. Maybe not consciously, but somewhere deep in his predator brain, he knew someone might come looking someday. He had a routine. Up at 6 a.m., coffee on the porch, left for work by 7. He drove a white Ford pickup, immaculately maintained, no dents, no scratches. He'd stop at the same gas station every Tuesday and Friday. Fill up, pay cash, never went inside. Lunch was a packed sandwich, eaten in his truck at whatever job site he was working. Home by 5, dinner at 6, lights out by 10. A man living like clockwork, a man who never deviated. I try to trash, pull anyway, standard procedure. You'd be amazed what people throw away: toothbrushes, razors, used tissues. But Martin didn't put trash on the curb. Everything went into that drum. Next, I tried restaurants, followed him to a diner in Kelso, watched him eat a bowl of soup, prayed he'd leave the spoon. But when he stood up, he wiped down the spoon with a napkin, put it in his jacket pocket, took the napkin with him. He left nothing behind. No prints, no saliva, no skin cells. It was like watching a man who'd rehearsed his own paranoia for decades. I tried the gas station. Thought maybe he'd touch the pump handle, leave prints. But he wore gloves, in April. Thin work gloves every single time. Pumped his gas, paid cash, drove away. No evidence, no mistake. I reported back to my supervisor. She asked if I wanted to bring him in for questioning, rattle him, see if he'd slip. I said no. If we spooked him now and he lawyered up, we'd never get him. I needed him to feel safe. I needed him to make one small human mistake. Weeks passed. I followed him to job sites, watched him work. He was good at what he did, methodical, precise. Clients loved him. He showed up on time, finished early, charged fair prices. He was the kind of guy you'd recommend to your neighbor, the kind of guy you'd never suspect. That's what made my skin crawl. He was hiding in plain sight, a predator wearing the mask of a helpful handyman. That mistake came in late April. Surveillance tracked him to the Tacoma ferry terminal. He was heading into Seattle for a doctor's appointment. We couldn't subpoena medical records without a warrant we didn't have, but I went anyway, just to watch, just to be close to him. The terminal was crowded, gray, cold. Martin wore a brown jacket and a mariner's cap. He looked like any other middle-aged guy heading into the city. But I saw the tension in the way he scanned the crowd. He was always watching, always aware. He walked like a man who knew he was being hunted, but didn't know when the trap would spring. He walked to a coffee stand, ordered a large vanilla latte, paid cash, took the cup and found a bench near the water. I stayed back, blended into a group of tourists taking photos. My heart was pounding. That cup, that paper cup in his hands. If he left it, if he threw it away, I could grab it. But I'd watched him pocket a spoon. I wasn't hopeful. He drank slowly. 15 minutes. 20. The wind off Puget Sound was cold, biting. My hands were numb. But I didn't move. Couldn't risk losing sight of him. He sat there, sipping his coffee, watching the ferries come and go. Calm, patient. Like he had all the time in the world. The ferry horn blasted, signaling boarding. He stood, finished the last sip, and walked toward the trash bins. I moved closer, trying not to look like I was moving closer. My pulse was hammering in my throat. This was it. This was the moment. 18 years came down to whether or not this man threw away a paper cup. He pulled the plastic lid off, took the straw out. He knew. Saliva concentrates on straws and lids. He pocketed both. Then he looked at the paper cup in his hand. He crushed it, squeezed it flat, like he was calculating whether it was still useful to us. He must have decided the paper was too porous. The liquid had washed it clean. He tossed the crushed cup into the recycling bin and walked toward the ferry. I didn't run. Couldn't draw attention. I walked casually to the bin, pulled on gloves I'd been carrying, and reached in. The cup was at the bottom, soaked with someone else's soda. I fished it out, careful not to touch the rim, dropped it into an evidence bag. Sealed. Shoved it under my jacket. It felt heavier than a gun. I drove straight to the lab, handed the bag to the tech, a woman named Gretchen who'd been running forensics for 20 years. She looked at the crushed cup, looked at me. "The straw's gone?" she asked. "The lid too?" "Just test the rim," I said. "The wax coating?" He put his lips on it. He drank from it. She didn't look hopeful. But she took it. It took 48 hours. The wax on that paper cup had preserved a microscopic amount of saliva, skin cells that sloughed off when he drank. It wasn't a full profile. It was partial, but it was enough. Gretchen called me at 6 in the morning. I was already awake, hadn't slept. "Kevin," she said, "it's a match. Perfect match. 18 years. 18 years of burning trash and pocketing straws and living like a man who knew he was guilty. And he slipped because he thought a soggy paper cup was harmless. I called Angela Armitage, told her we had him, told her we had his DNA, told her his name. She didn't say anything for a long time. Then she said, "Martin Finley. I remember him. He fixed my fence." Her voice went cold. "That was him? That whole time that was him?" "Yes," I said. "That was him. We arrested him on a Tuesday morning. I wanted to be the one to knock on his door, but protocol said otherwise. The arrest team went in at 6 a.m. I watched from a vehicle parked at the end of his driveway. He didn't resist, didn't look surprised. He just looked at the agents, then at the burn barrel in his yard, and nodded. He thought he'd been so careful. He'd burned everything. But he forgot that even monsters get thirsty. When we searched his house, we found a workspace in the garage. Immaculate. Tools labeled, screws sorted by size, everything in its place, and on the wall, a calendar. Actually, a stack of them, 20 of them going back to 2005. On every single one, August 14th was circled in red ink. No notes, no names, just the circle. The day he took Brooke Armitage. His own private holiday. He'd been celebrating it for 18 years. Alone. In silence. Circling the date like it was something to be proud of. We found something else, too. In a locked drawer in his bedroom. A small wooden box. Inside was a bracelet. Silver chain, tiny charms. A gift Brooke's mom had given her for her 15th birthday. She'd been wearing it the night she was taken. Martin had kept it. A trophy. A reminder. Proof that he'd gotten away with it. The trial took 9 months. His defense tried to argue contamination. Tried to argue coincidence. But the science was airtight. The genealogy led us to him. The cup confirmed it. And Brooke Armitage testified. She sat on that stand and described the smell of sawdust and peppermint, and the way his voice was calm, almost polite, like he was doing her a favor. Martin sat there and didn't look at her once. Brooke was incredible. She didn't cry, didn't waver. She looked at the jury and told them what happened in detail, with the kind of strength I've rarely seen. The defense tried to rattle her during cross-examination, tried to poke holes in her memory, but she didn't break. She'd been waiting 18 years to tell her story, and she wasn't going to let anyone take that from her. The jury convicted him in under 3 hours. The judge gave him 30 years. He'll die in prison. I called Angela the day the verdict came in. She cried. I cried. We didn't say much. Didn't need to. After 18 years of August 14th, we finally had an answer. Not closure. I don't believe in closure. But an answer. I still keep the file in my trunk. Can't bring myself to take it out. It's lighter now, though. Not in weight, but in the way it sits there. Like it's not screaming at me anymore. People ask me if I ever doubted we'd catch him. Honest answer? Yes. Every year that passed, I doubted a little more, but I kept working it. Kept running down leads that went nowhere. Kept hoping that science or luck or something would shift in our favor. And it did, 'cause Martin Finlay got thirsty, because he thought a paper cup was harmless, because he forgot that even the smallest mistake leaves a trail. I'm retiring next year. 23 years with the Bureau. I've worked 100 cases, but this is the one I'll remember. Not because it was the hardest, but because it taught me that justice doesn't have to be fast. It just has to be inevitable. And sometimes inevitable takes 18 years and a coffee cup that nobody thought mattered. Brooke's doing better now. She called me a few months after the trial, said she finally felt like she could breathe again. She's thinking about going back to school. Wants to be a counselor, help other survivors. I told her I thought that was a hell of an idea. She laughed. It was the first time I'd heard her laugh. Martin Finlay is in a cell in Walla Walla. He'll never see the outside again. He'll never circle another August 14th. And somewhere in Seattle, there's a Starbucks that doesn't know it helped solve a case that haunted me for 18 years. I drive past that ferry terminal sometimes. Don't stop. Don't need to. But I think about that morning. The gray sky, the cold wind, the moment I reached into that trash bin and pulled out a crushed paper cup that weighed nothing but meant everything. That's the job. Not car chases. Not shootouts. Just patience. And a little bit of luck. and the faith that even monsters make mistakes. And they do make mistakes. All of them. Eventually, you just have to be there when it happens. You have to be watching when they forget, just for 1 second, that someone's still looking for them. That someone hasn't given up. That somewhere out there, an agent with a box in his trunk is still working the case, still checking the databases, still hoping for the breakthrough that will bring a monster to justice. 18 years is a long time to wait. But it's nothing compared to a lifetime of knowing you let a predator walk free. I didn't let that happen. I couldn't. Not after seeing Brooke in that hospital bed. Not after hearing Angela's voice on the phone every August 14th. Not after looking at that DNA profile for 18 years and knowing there was a name attached to it somewhere. I just had to find it. And I did. In a coffee cup. At a ferry terminal. On a cold April morning when a man got careless because he thought no one was watching. But I was watching. I'm always watching. That's the job. That's the promise we make to the victims. We'll keep looking. We'll keep fighting. We'll never stop until we bring you home. And sometimes home isn't a place. Sometimes it's just an answer, a name, a face. Proof that the person who hurt you is finally being held accountable. That's what I gave Brooke Armitage. That's what I gave her mother. An answer. And in my line of work, sometimes that's the only justice you can deliver, but it's enough. It has to be.